A typical morning on the farm promised to be monotonous, but one discovery nearly stopped the farmer's heart. Behind tiny bundles of fur lay an extraordinary secret. A typical May morning at John Stevens's ranch began as usual. At 5:30 a.m., as the first rays of sun started to gild the peaks of the Rocky Mountains, the 54-year-old farmer was already leaving his log house to check the livestock. The air was fresh and cool, scented with pine needles and freshly cut hay. Approaching the old wooden barn where the newborn lambs were kept, John heard a faint squeak. At first, he thought it was a mouse, but the sound repeated, plaintive and trembling. Crouching down, the farmer pushed aside a pile of hay in the far corner and froze in surprise. Before him lay 3 tiny, fluffy bundles. The kittens were palm-sized, their fur an unusual grey-brown shade with barely noticeable spotted patterns. Their eyes were still closed, tiny paws clutched helplessly in the cold. John gently touched them. The bodies were icy. "Where is their mother?" he whispered, looking around. There were no signs of an adult cat. Only a few drops of blood on the boards suggested there had been a fight, perhaps with a coyote or a lynx. Without hesitation, John took off his plaid shirt, carefully wrapped the trembling babies in it, and carried them into the house. His wife, Mary, hearing the story, immediately took action. "We need to warm them up urgently," she said, grabbing a hot water bottle and soft flannel blankets. The next 72 hours turned into a marathon for the Stevens family. Every 2 hours, even at night, they fed the kittens with a special formula for newborn animals using an eyedropper. Mary, who had experience as a veterinary nurse, closely monitored their body temperature and weight. The babies weighed only 300 grams each. On the 3rd day, John decided to show the kittens to specialists from Glacier National Park. Biologist Sarah Wilson, upon examining the animals, went pale. "John, these aren't ordinary kittens," she said, gently turning one over. "Look at these wide paws with retractable claws and the shape of the skull. These are cougar cubs." Laboratory tests confirmed they were rare specimens, mountain lions, puma concolor, with a population in Montana of fewer than 200 individuals. That evening, John received a call from a stranger who introduced himself as an exotic animal collector. The voice on the line sounded oily and persuasive. "I'll give you $250,000, cash, by tomorrow. Imagine what you could do for your family." John closed his eyes, remembering how Rocky, the male he had named, first nibbled on his finger with tiny teeth, cuddling trustingly against the warmth of a human hand. "They are not for sale," he said firmly, and hung up the phone. The next day, he worked with the biologist to develop a rehabilitation plan, find a nursing cat as a foster mother, gradually introduce the cubs to raw meat, and build a large enclosure in preparation for life in the wild. A month later, the cubs were moved to a special rehabilitation center. There, they learned to hunt live rabbits, provided by local farmers, climb trees and avoid people. When the first snow arrived in November, it was release time. The enclosure was opened at dawn. Rocky took a few hesitant steps, then turned around. For a moment, his golden eyes met John's. Within that gaze was all the wild wisdom of nature. "Go on, boy," the farmer whispered, feeling something warm and salty rolling down his cheek. "You are free." The young cougars were released in a 20,000-acre reserve. Special GPS collars allowed tracking their movements. The largest male, Rocky, claimed a territory of 150 square kilometers. The 2 females stayed together, which is unusual for this species. A year later, camera traps recorded Rocky with prey, an adult deer. For John, it was the best confirmation that he had made the right decision. 3 years passed since that memorable morning. John Stevens, now 57, still greeted the dawns on his ranch, but something in his usual routine had changed. Every morning, approaching the old barn, he involuntarily lingered on the corner where he once found the 3 tiny creatures that had transformed his life. One late autumn, as the first snowflakes started to swirl in the frosty air, John set out to check the distant pastures. Suddenly, his horse snorted nervously and froze. Among the withered grass, a familiar silhouette appeared, a grown male cougar with a characteristic scar on his left side, a mark Rocky received in a fight with a coyote back in the rehabilitation center. "Well, hello, old friend," John whispered, feeling his heart pounding wildly in his chest. The cougar didn't run. He slowly walked along the edge of the clearing, then sat down as if giving the man the chance to observe him. His golden eyes, full of wild dignity, looked at the farmer without fear, but also without the former trust. It was an equal's gaze, a free creature, grateful but not obliged. The next morning, John discovered an unusual gift on the porch, a fresh rabbit carcass. Mary, laughing through tears, said, "It seems our boy decided to take care of the old folks." But the real miracle was yet to come. A week later, Sarah Wilson brought astonishing news. Camera traps had captured Rocky with a female and 3 cubs. The mountain lion population in Montana started to recover. In spring, when the snow melted and the first snowdrops pierced toward the sun, John found tracks near the same barn, large feline footprints beside tiny ones the size of coins. The farmer's heart tightened. He carefully pushed aside the hay and froze. Before him lay a newborn cougar, an exact copy of those he had saved 3 years ago. But this time the mother was there, a majestic cougar with a recognizable scar. She didn't run away, only purred softly, as if saying, "They are safe. Thank you." When John returned to the house, his hands were trembling. On the kitchen table lay a card from Sarah. "Thank you for giving us a miracle. Your story changed the state laws. Now the trade in wild animals is punishable by imprisonment." The old farmer stepped onto the porch. Somewhere in the mountains, a proud roar echoed. Nature had rewarded him abundantly, not with money, but with something much more valuable. The chance to see how a once right decision continued to live in the golden eyes of new generations of wild cats, freely running across the Rocky Mountain slopes. John Stevens's story became an example of harmonious coexistence between humans and wildlife, reminding us that sometimes the most valuable thing isn't money, but the ability to preserve the true nature of things. Did you enjoy this story? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to not miss new releases. See you soon.